Okay, so I'm a little scared of this one. This video has the potential to swiftly circle around and sink its canine-esque teeth deep into the muscle tissue of my dump truck. Because not only must I do my routine verbal gymnastics around why each weapon is in the spot that it is, I must also convince you that it deserves the secondary title of worst weapon in its own category to begin with, resulting in a huge window of disagreement that I may very well have just opened up for all of you. So how exciting. Well, instead of gathering the skincare routines of all the bosses and ranking them in a list, or whatever dumb fucking idea you guys have come up with this month, I'm just gonna plow right through the rest of this script like the sanity-deprived animal everyone knows I am. You wanna play some War Thunder? Ah, sure you do, you miserable fuck. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle game ever made. It has a library of over 2,500 different vehicles, cruisers, frigates, fighter jets, tanks of varying sizes, and other machines from 10 major nations. And it's available on PC, console, and mobile devices right now. Unless you've spent the past decade with your head stuck in your toilet, you probably know about War Thunder. It's blow shit up the game. But War Thunder also goes a bit deeper than that. The vehicles span across multiple time periods while remaining technologically accurate for the time in which they were built, and every vehicle has an incredible amount of detail, personal customization, and even this additional X-ray view that allows you to see exactly where and how your vehicle was damaged if something hits you. Over 70 million concurrent players, and somehow it's still growing, and their absurdly accurate attention to detail has accumulated one of the most dedicated military history communities I think I've ever seen on the internet. War Thunder is available for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and even mobile devices. Sign up using my links, and both new and previous players who haven't played in 6 months across PC and consoles receive a bonus pack shot that comprises multiple premium vehicles, an exclusive vehicle decorator, and 100,000 silver lions for a limited time only. Number 42, the Soldier's Crossbow. Put down those calculators, throw the chalkboards in the trash, because all I need to prove to you this crossbow is the king of the shits is basic third-grade arithmetic. Since crossbows are one of the few weapon types that earn no benefit from scalings whatsoever, the competition in this category has been downgraded to nothing more than a race for the highest base damage, or in this case, the lowest. And I guess the Soldier's Crossbow actually did some pre-warm-up stretches and about 3 grams of cocaine, because not only did this weapon sweep the entire race, but it's also one of the only crossbows that requires actual farming to get a hold of. Farming what, you may ask? Only some of the dullest, most monotonous replacements you could possibly shove a sword into. Soldiers. Hence the name. And with an unadjusted drop rate of 4%, farming these office drones is right up there with disputing a bill with your bank on the list of humanity's most exciting ventures. Number 41, the Harp Bow. An attempt was certainly made, but everything that went into the attempt, I fear, did not come out as intended. The Harp Bow sacrifices base damage, scaling, and the flexibility of being a regular, non-somber weapon with music. And it's not even entertaining music to listen to, like it's just a random strum of something vaguely resembling a basic chord that fires off in tandem with the arrow. A gimmick that I'm assuming is supposed to be fun and quirky, but honestly incites immeasurable malice and frustration. Yeah, the bow sucks, but at least we gave you some tunes to listen to. Cool. Can't wait to find the fucking cassette tape launcher somewhere in Night Rain. This is the same logic that gives us things like elevator music, and that compressed sound wave of artificial happiness that's supposed to resemble a song when customer service leaves you on hold for 15 minutes. In the exact same way, the Harp Bow tries to compensate for an objectively shittier experience by filling the space with jovial melodies that sound like they were taken straight from the free trial version of FL Studio. And it genuinely puts me in a worse mood than I was before every time I have to talk about it. Number 40, Ansbach's Longbow. Wahoo! First DLC weapon. Shit, that didn't take long. Since scalings are very similar across the board for longbows, we can take the same logic applied to the crossbows and shove it right on in here with these two. This mainly competed with the Serpentbow and the Longbow to ultimately win the title of Worst Bow, chiefly due to the visceral spike of repulsion I have to swallow whenever I record footage of the bow's unique skill. I'm willing to give it maybe a single bonus point for the description not lying to me for once, since this bow actually can fire to the same tempo as a light bow. But maybe don't take a 8 fucking arrows out of my inventory if the dude I'm aiming at can only eat a maximum of 2 at any given time. On top of needing 43 dexterity to even pick up and use properly, its base damage gets spine blasted into the ground as a countermeasure to it using light bow animations, and its status buildup loses out to the bone bow and even base game options like the pulley crossbow and I guess just about any light bow with barrage equipped. Shit, I could see the repeating crossbow doing a better job if your intended target has brains of sand and candle wax. Number 39, Perfumer's Shield. Contrary to popular belief, shields are perfectly sustainable as weapons all on their own because beating someone over the head with a 27-pound chunk of testosterone can still at least make someone reconsider if fighting you is worth it. Small shields, unfortunately, do not have this advantage, and advertise stopping power more similar to that of someone's grandma spanking someone with a rolling pin. There aren't really any exciting deviations from the basic attack string of the shield type you're using, since I'm sure they didn't account for an uncomfortably large subset of the player base to start assaulting fuckers with oversized lunch trays, but that makes my job easier, so the lack of variety is certainly welcomed. Since there's little difference outside of base damage, this ultimately poises the Perfumer Shield to be the ideal recipient of not only worst in its class, but it's also scratching its nails against the carpet in agony trying not to get dragged down to the very bottom of this list. Number 38, the Beastman's Jar Shield. Do you ever get tired of me repeating the same points for a different entry? Surely a collective of people out there have noticed it enough times to where they could pretty accurately formulate exactly what I would say about this shield, for instance, and its potency as a weapon. So because I'm lazy, we're gonna play a little game instead. You guys get to write this paragraph for me. 3 sentences or less, must incorporate the following arguments. The one I think is written the funniest gets a free month of my highest Patreon tier. I am so dead fucking serious about all of this. Number 37, the Ivory Sickle. I think the way this dagger was made offers a rare and valuable insight into the philosophy behind a lot of the game's balancing decisions. Mainly the fact that at least a few people on the balancing team apparently thought guard penetration was just the shit. According to how this knife works, that single advantage by itself should be enough to outweigh the flexibility of being infusible or buffable, the convenience of leveling with somber stones, and an amount of base damage that, if you're under the influence of enough substances, one day, God willing, might make a tinge of fucking sense. But instead, it gets invalidated by the crystal knife, the glintstone kris. Any magic-infused dagger might lose a damage race versus a pair of chopsticks if you're dedicated enough. Number 36, Sentry's Torch. So, funny thing about torches, despite the reputation they have, torches by themselves offer pretty okay backup damage if you're just offhanding one in a cave somewhere. But this torch in particular has quite an unpleasant set of attributes attached to it, even for a torch. First, it's the only torch that deals holy damage, already making it less enticing right out of the gate, but it's also the only torch you can't detach the default skill from. So if you're using this to fight the Black Knives in the Ordina Everjail or the Sage Cave, your ass is stuck with that torch attack business unless you can stunt on them while they're invisible. Additionally, it needs to be purchased from a merchant, and 7,000 runes is a remarkably steep price for a weapon I'll only ever use twice, neither of which involve using it as an actual weapon. And I know it was intended that way because the Black Knives have a holy damage negation of 40%. I was really close to making this another race between the base damages, which would have given the last place to the Lamenting Visage, but that stout little brick shitter has a 1.73 in strength scaling at max level for some reason, so that was never gonna happen. Number 35, Bloodfiend's Sacred Spear. Having an ash that half-assedly imitates the power of a greater weapon both isn't a bad idea, and has actually been done before, multiple times, successfully. The Blink Bolt Ash, for instance, has 2 separate counterparts that can each be found on their own exclusive weapon, and then there's the 2 variants of Rancor Slash that can be found on their own set of weapons. The 2 Frost Stomp Ashes exist, and even Millicent has a unique curved sword that allows her to do only the first set of waterfowl slashes during combat. So it stands to reason this weapon should have at least turned out with a degree of competence. But the hit bullet is somehow fat enough to get caught on random walls and rock formations a good 5 feet away from where you were actually aiming. The standard R1 chain fails to measure up to other infusible great spears like Mesmer's Soldier Spear, yet still not having the flexibility of being infusible, and it sacrifices that infusibility for whatever gawkish nonsense the office intern submitted for the unique skill. Number 34, the Rotten Crystal Staff. 2 negative things about this staff here coordinate one of the most powerful 1-2 punch combos I've ever seen that knocks this blueberry and syphilis popsicle down to walking stick tier with horrifying efficiency. 1, its placement in the endgame, despite having no advantages over the basic crystal staff, and if anything, seems to have been made measurably worse by comparison. And 2, the buildup of Scarlet Rot not carrying over to the sorceries in which you cast from the staff, which did didn't have to be like some huge number. It could have been a negligible amount if you were afraid of creating a balancing headache for yourself, so I understand why it's not there. I'm still pissed. I'm pissed because the only advantage left for me to explore with this is to just arm myself with both crystal staves at the same time for double baby bonus damage. That rot buildup on the staff might as well be Borderlands style flavor text on the side because there's no reason to give even the smallest shit. Number 33, the Cane Sword. The description makes sure you know the quality of the item you just picked up by saying it was repurposed as a walking stick and the tip of the blade has been blunted over time. Empirical evidence that you might as well have just picked up a metal pipe. And we ain't playing no Silent Hill 2 in this bitch. Picking up a metal pipe does not just hand you the keys to the end credits. With 60s in all stats, this eternally distressed casserole of inadequacy has the lowest base damage of any straight sword, trailing the weathered straight sword by an inexcusable margin of 40 base damage at max level, despite this sword being placed 10 entries above the ladder in the previous ranking all 308 weapons video. Even the stone sheath sword can outpace it with a little bit of strength. The affinities are shit, the range is shit, it is one of the rare cases that might truly be beyond saving. Number 32, the Flowing Curved Sword. It was between this and the Shotel, but the many small advantages of the Shotel, such as block piercing, it's incredibly lightweight, and also being the lightest weapon that can accept seppuku as a valid ash, started to add up over time, and eventually I was led to the decision to declare the Flowing Curved Sword as the game's worst curved sword. I don't care how wide the damage gap ends up being, nothing on this planet can save the non-existent hyper armor and poise damage on that charged R2. It took months for people to even figure out the dancer set in the DLC actually improves the strong attacks, and it still doesn't feel like it's really doing enough half the time. Every single hit from both charged R2s can successfully connect, and it won't even activate any of your multi-hit talismans, so I fail to see any advantage whatsoever that this weapon attains other than looking swag as fuck. And that's unfortunately not on my list of criteria. Number 31, the Deadly Poison Perfume Bottle. All of its benefits given to the player from its poison status buildup end up rendered thoroughly pointless due to the downright unconstitutional gap in base damage between this perfume bottle and all the others. I can't think of a single reason it needed to be a somber weapon. You have other status bottles like Chilling and Frenzy Flame that just didn't get swept up by the trend, I guess, even though it would have actually made more sense to somberify those as well. And all other bottles except this one come with the benefit of pure elemental damage on a 1-pound weapon, which is, you know, the fucking point. Literally the biggest advantage of using a perfume bottle as a main weapon. The physical damage not only feels like a step backwards, it feels like a deliberate decision made to flush the weapon's competency just because they were afraid they added too many poison boosting tools in the DLC. Or at least that's what it feels like to me. I can't like prove that, but that's what it feels like to me. Number 30, the Katar. Of all the nerfs and patch changes that have caused mass disagreement over the few years, this has been the only one that I felt was like legitimately malicious. Remember that time EVE Online started getting resumes from longtime players of the game just so they could make changes and shit that would directly benefit the clan they were in? Because like this actually happened, and I feel like this could have been what happened with the Katar. Some turbo loser in PvP got a little too embarrassed by this weapon and made it his lifelong mission to uproot the epicenter of his suffering. That is the only sensible explanation I can come up with for why they drowned this in nerfs only to make room for the exact same balancing problem in the DLC with a completely different weapon. Number 29, the Wooden Greatshield. Once again, the numbers tell all, and whenever I have to spend the next 45 seconds doing math, I feel a tinge of anxiety that it might cause some people to be immediately disinterested, even though this has been my MO for over 2 years at this point. Now, maybe the Wooden Greatshield didn't actually receive the letter of acceptance welcoming him into the Greatshield Academy, or maybe he just got lost somewhere at a Ren fair, not completely sure. But if you ever had any qualms about this shield being in the category that it's in before 1.14, those disagreements have been amplified to such an extent that they've taken over the conversation completely. This factory-grade piece of plywood isn't worth the runes you spend on it, and you find this bitch in a scaffolding somewhere. Number 28, the Whip. It's a whip. It does whip things. Every single time I've come across this item in list videos, I've had the exact same couple of lines with the exact same vocal delivery because I refuse to put in more effort writing about it than somebody did making or conceiving it. Have you seen Indiana Jones? Have you played the Castlevania games? Well, then you shouldn't need a fucking free trial to know what you're getting into here. It's a whip. Next entry. Number 27, the Hand Ballista. With no scalings helping out the cannon subgenre of Crossbow, the competition between the three is once again left up to the numbers themselves, and only the numbers. And when it's that simple, it's hard not to see the Hand Ballista as anything but a decisive loser. But it's the worst kind of loser. It's a loser that needs to go out with a joke. Someone who thinks he's funnier than he really is, and showcases just a tinge of self-awareness that suggests he was never really that interested in taking things too seriously. Case in point, I don't know what kind of bullshit game of detached observer the description writer is playing here, but I would pay real money to see an average soldier face down an army with nothing but this weapon on their person. I could bring this to a 2v1 against a pair of imps and still not feel completely confident. Number 26, the Greatbow. The Greatbow gets thrown in last, not exactly because it's the least damaging. If that was the only criteria for the list, the Erdtree Greatbow would have already had a platinum record-selling diss track written in its honor. But the Greatbow is the only bow that doesn't really have anything special going for it. Igon's Greatbow has synergies with Igon's Drake Hunt and the Igon Harpoon. Then there's the Lion Greatbow with the Radon Spear arrows. The Golem Greatbow is the highest damaging out of all the Greatbows if you're just looking to take your business to normal dudes without a lot of fuss, and even the Erdtree Greatbow has a cool synergy with golden great arrows that can buff allies that are present at the point of impact. And I can't in good confidence say that's worthless on single player runs because I've used it on Spirit Ashes before. The Greatbow doesn't give you anything. No fanfare, no 17% extra damage against Disney adults or some shit. It's a big ass clothes hanger. Number 25, the Torchpole. I swear on the graves of my village plundering ancestors, if I get a single comment telling me to reconsider this spear because it resets Frostbite, I'm nuking this channel and becoming a fucking drug dealer. Have you wondered why so many players like using this for fashion purposes? It's because fashion is all it gives you.
But what if I'm carrying a torch and don't want to be stuck with one ash of war?
Bitch, you're stuck with one ash anyways, fuckle nuts, because the Torchpole doesn't accept infusions. So Charge Forth is permanently attached to this backyard decoration like a parasitic worm and it's not coming off. It's okay if you're using this inside caves and whatnot, but just as long as we're admitting to ourselves that, at least when it comes to practicality, the lantern item turns every single conversation you could possibly have about the benefits of light in caves into background noise. Number 24, the Celebrant's Cleaver. This was actually a 5-way tie versus the two forked hatchets, the hand axe, and the battle axe. The battle axe offers absolutely nothing of note, including less than ideal base damage that's so low that it can be fully replaced with the Highland axe before you've even completed the first legacy dungeon. But the two forked hatchet weapons have faster movesets and additional bleed, as does the hand axe, to compensate with its extremely low damage. The Celebrant's Cleaver has it has an alternate moveset, but it's not exactly faster. In fact, the alternate animation of the Celebrant Cleaver is actually slower than the base moveset. The other two Celebrant weapons don't have this issue either. It's just the base moveset for the hammer and the rib rake. So what gives? Is the rune acquisition gimmick on the Cleaver just too powerful to handle? Were you afraid of making the 3 god cards of rune acquisition and unleashing the power of Elden Lord Elon Musk on the innocent public or something? What is the point behind this decision? Number 23, the Forked Greatsword. This greatsword I decided on being the worst because it's the only greatsword that directly competes with one that is buyable from a merchant despite needing to be farmed from imps at a 2% drop rate. I'm talking about the Flamberge. Similar scaling, base damage, and additional bleed buildup, also an advantage of the Forked Greatsword. And even still, the base damage on these two greatswords are noticeably lower than what's considered average. In fact, the Forked Greatsword falls tremendously below the average, leaving a damage gap of around 20 to 30 between itself and the Flamberge. All of these negatives on top of having to farm it from some of the most alarmingly frustrating enemies just amalgamate into this massive red flag of a weapon that can only compete with the weapon that still isn't really that good if we're being honest with ourselves. It's like stepping in dog shit and trying to scrape it off with an older, harder piece of dog shit. Number 22, the Flail. There's really no competition with anything on the list here. It can't even compete with the other two basic flails in the lineup. The Knight Rider Flail is a better option for dex, the Chainlink Flail is a better option for strength, and one of them is a guaranteed drop from a Knight's Cavalry that can be found less than 5 minutes away from where you first start the goddamn game. This flail could be the only weapon of its type on the entire list, and it would still find a way to get left behind by like a shield or a sponge or something. It's also incredibly jarring seeing what an actually historic historically accurate flail looks like. I don't know how I didn't pick up on this, but I guess I just watched some episode of Tom and Jerry or some cartoon or whatever the fuck and saw a cartoonishly oversized flail of some kind, and then without realizing it, I must have just internalized the shape of that flail and assumed it was accurate. It's not, by the way, for anyone who needs to like hear this. This is what an actual flail looks like. Yeah, I feel like most people knew this already. Hope you guys enjoyed the new Rusty lore expansion that just came out. Number 21, the Smithscript Dagger. So I don't know where the fuck this one goes. There's only one throwing blade. It competes with literally nothing. And honestly, I'm still not sold on throwing blades being a legitimate type either, because it's just a dagger with a Smithscript enchantment. There are other Smithscript weapons that can all be thrown. That doesn't mean throwable great hammer is suddenly a type of weapon. Also, I get the range on these sort of suck balls, but it's the only weapon type that's completely tailored towards ranged combat if you're not counting bows, while also being better than all of the bows. Is there anyone that's actually mad over the fact that the range only has the dagger going like a few feet in front of you? I don't know, I feel like that's such an illegitimate thing to get mad over that it almost comes across as performative. Like when someone tells you they hate when people end sentences with prepositions. It's just like, are you sure? Are you sure? You sure you didn't just like skip lunch or something? Number 20, the Noble's Estoc. My god, I didn't even know affinity scalings could get this bad. Thrusting swords are on the upper half of the register too, so the fact that they would take a weapon with stats this bad and lock it behind a 0.5% drop rate. Are you fucking insane? I'm gonna power bomb your entire staff of programmers through a fucking table. What is wrong with you? This is the type of shit that makes me want to spread misinformation. Like if I told you could only get this sword if you bought the premium Elden Battle Pass along with the pre-order of the game's official soundtrack, would anyone even fucking care? Not a single affinity scaling goes above a B, and you think this is worth locking behind a 0.5% drop rate. And you know what? It's fucking beautiful too. I love how they made this sword look, especially the hilt. Somebody spent a massive amount of time on this and then locked it behind one of the lowest drop rates in the game. How am I even supposed to be mad at that? Like, is this sword even real? Number 19, the Gargoyle's Great Axe. Holy shit, this axe just pisses me off. This axe could have earned a spot on the front cover of a supermodel magazine had someone not used it to make a fucking sandwich. I have never seen a bigger waste of an S scaling in my entire career doing any of these lists. I can say with the utmost confidence, bravado, and finality, that heavy affinity has an S in scaling because that's what it needs to be worth a shit. And it still fails. Measured up against nearly every other great axe in the game, it comes up short. With 60s in every stat, 6 of this weapon's affinities appear at the bottom 10 when sorted by total AR. I don't care how light this weapon is. I could bicep curl 6 of these in each hand with number 13 wedged in between my balls and I'd still empty my pockets looking for something else. Number 18, the Pest's Glaive. It was a really close call between this and the Vulgar Militia Shotel, but upon giving this dilemma some further deliberation, the angrier I became at the special passive effect of this weapon. 2% non-physical damage negation. Why the fuck even open your mouth? It can't possibly be lore thematic since Kindred Pests seem to get mulched by any element I throw at them, up to and including rocks, swords, and my own fists. In every other context, there's at least a few affinities from a few different halberds that easily outpace this one despite needing to farm for it. And for some reason, somebody thought 2% more elemental defense was just the bargaining chip this weapon needed to contend with all of them. It's random, it's out of place, it begs an explanation, and judging by how well I've handled decisions justified by the esoteric lore in this game, actually hearing said explanation, if there is one, would probably do nothing but piss me off anyways, so my final verdict is just a big ol' who gives a shit. Number 17, the Scythe. It's a fucking scythe. Gets left behind by all the other scythes in the game. Can't even reach an Eth scaling with the keen affinity, even though its base damage, I would say, more than justifies it. I think the only reason a select few players fall in love with its simplicity is because the other options all have noticeably higher stat benchmarks that take some time to level up to. So it stands to reason the double 14s on the basic scythe look pretty attractive to someone just looking for a Grim Reaper cosplay, or someone who hasn't found the Grave Scythe yet. The Grave Scythe, despite scaling with strength, still has higher performance even with dex-centric affinities like Keen and Lightning. There aren't that many of them, so if you feel like you've slept on the basic scythe, then that probably means you've also slept on the scythe weapon type as a whole, and you should probably devote some time to checking out the others as well. Number 16, the Rotten Great Axe. This colossal weapon found itself in a three-way tie between the Golem's Halberd for dead-ass lying about the damage type it inflicts, the Prelate's Crozier for its lack of good base damage despite me breaking my spine just to pick the goddamn thing up, and this one. And I settled on this one for 2 reasons. One, you could pay me real money to find a more misleading group of stat requirements on a weapon, and I don't think I could do it. 30 strength, 10 dex, and this is a dex weapon. Fuck you. 2, a 3-hit attack string with animation speeds this slow is incredibly hard to make work for status builds, and the one hole in that argument being the absurdly high build-up numbers on the colossal weapon affinities this weapon doesn't even take advantage of. Worse yet, it chose one of the only 2 status ailments in the game that can't scale with arcane. But even still, at least Frostbite gets an affinity. No, we had to land on the one status that doesn't have its own dedicated affinity, nor can it be improved with arcane. 65 better be your favorite number, because you're not getting rid of it. Number 15, the Finger Seal. There existed one single niche that this seal was able to fulfill perfectly, and that is providing sorcerers, warriors, and other non-faith users an easy medium in which to cast basic, low-level support incantations that don't ask for your weekly church attendance and the deed to your house just to cast it. And now, with the addition of Staff of the Great Beyond, that niche has shriveled up like the stink bug I sprayed with Raid this morning and died. When looking at the raw numbers, it's hard to see why this would be considered the worst seal, since no matter what your stats are, the Finger Seal seems to fall comfortably somewhere in the middle of the lineup. But you'll notice, all the seals below it also have a valuable passive boost that improves a certain type of incantation by a significant percent. As soon as you're able to level into what's considered mid-game faith, you should absolutely start looking for something else. Number 14, the Monk's Flame Blade. Almost put the Dismounter and the Beastman's Cleaver here, but the Beastman Cleaver had a high strength scaling on the heavy affinity that I couldn't ignore, and the Dismounter had a few really easy farming spots that increase its likelihood of being found. The Monk's Flame Blade has affinity scalings and base damage very similar to the Dismounter, but with the added disadvantage of being one of the fussiest stuck-up bitches I've ever embarked on a farming expedition for. The drop rate itself is a 4%, which is fine, but it can only be dropped by the specific fire monks that use the CGS in combat, and I can maybe think of like 2 off the top of my head. So if lighter weight and salvageable elemental infusions are things you consider priorities in your build, then I hope you're prepared to spend actual real-life hours getting your hands on it, because the scarcity of this enemy type positions this weapon to be one of the rarest in the entire game, and subsequently one of the most disappointing. Number 13, the Twin Blade. Ever since I learned what I did about the status motion values of Twin Blades, I've never been able to look at them with the same amount of respect. It's like having a son that gets all A's constantly, but then you find out he gives money to people on OnlyFans. Like you're still proud of him, but you just wish a few things would have been handled better. When pairing them up with flexible ashes like Double Slash or Sword Dance, Twin Blades generally have the slowest animation speeds. So slow that even Greatswords and Halberds tend to outpace them by just a few frames. The Twin Knight Swords still give more AR even on the Keen affinity despite being tailored towards strength. The Gargoyle's heavy Twin Blade gets a high A in strength scaling. The Godskin Peeler comes readily equipped with one of the blackest, most disgusting ass blasters in the whole game, and the rest of the Twin Blade lineup only seems to get better from there. Number 12, the Beast Claw. Not exactly what I would call a stiff competition for this category. There are only 2 items, and no matter what affinity you go for, no matter what your stats are, it seems the Red Bear Claw is just barely able to win out every single time. Not even the quality affinity with 80s and strength and dex can give the Beast Claw an edge. 11 damage is the smallest that power gap will ever get. I guess if you're a dex build and you would want to settle for the Keen affinity on the Beast Claw, that would place it a fair bit above the Red Bear, but I'm not sure why you'd want to do that since both weapons are strength based. I don't know, man. Ketchup or mustard? Fucking pick one. Everyone has their own personal preference or whatever, so I guess that means I can't call you an idiot and still say I'm being objective. How fucking unfortunate. Number 11, the Mace. Hammers as a weapon type have been enjoying some smooth-ass sailing lately. Ever since that one patch that buffed their animation speed, they've felt like completely different weapons. The Morningstar can apply bleed that much quicker, the War Pick actually does pierce damage now, and even the club given to the Wretch class has a scaling of 1.6 on its heavy affinity, even if the unbuffed alternate R1 chain still ends up being slightly slower than the standard chain. When you tally up all the advantages and disadvantages of each and every entry, the only weapon that doesn't really receive any significant favor here is the Mace. Playing with the Mace is just playing with the Morningstar without the bleed. That's actually not a joke or some exaggeration I just pulled out of my ass or anything. I tested for every single affinity and I don't think I saw a damage gap wider than like 10 between these 2 weapons. So I can all but verify at this point that using the Mace is probably one of the most nonsensical build choices you could ever make. Number 10, the Rotten Battle Hammer. Listen to me, look me in the eye. This ain't your grandma's great hammer. Putting this in the mid-2s in the old weapons ranking video is a decision that's aged like unpacked cheese in the July sun, because ever since 1.09, great hammers have been kicking only the assiest of asses. I say all of this knowing precisely and confidently which of them is deserving of the bottommost step on the ladder, but being the worst great hammer is still like a 5 out of 10 or something. First, range might not matter that much in PvE if you're using a weapon type with a very tightly packed range of ranges, but when your data graph looks like this, I think it's worth at least a mention. It also has you muscling through one of the base game's most frustrating catacomb layouts involving bomb-throwing imps, random mini-bosses, and a rough prototype for what one day, under a timeline depressing enough, could pass as an air conditioner. If you like the Rotten Battle Hammer for some reason, might I recommend to you the Great Star's Great Hammer. It's got way more range, higher AR even without the S scaling on the heavy infusion, and a status effect that actually fucking scales with something. Number 9, the Serpentbone Blade. I think it's obvious by now that I'm just ranking weapon types, or I might as well be, because there's really no argument for why you shouldn't at least try to use any of the following. It's just that worst place has to be given to somebody at the end of the day. So when I say the Serpentbone Blade sucks 10-year-old motor oil through a fucking curly straw, I hope that doesn't offend too many people. For every player tirelessly fighting on the front lines for camp underrated, the relentless attacks carried out by the no bleed and poison still isn't that great factions always feel 10 times as effective, and Fort Why the Hell Can't I Change the Ash just called in an airstrike. This seems like a weapon entirely built around poison buildup, judging by the Ash and the unique R2. And that's the one thing I actually have to give it credit for, is that they actually thought to give it the unique 2-tap heavy. And almost all status MVs on the double slash clock in at a 75, so the Ash doesn't even help the buildup as much as people think it does. Number 8, the Smithscript Cirque. Throwing 2 projectiles at close range instead of 1 ends up being unexpectedly strong, even if the range on the actual projectiles still feel like they could use some work. It got a range buff on 1.12.3, and I'm not sure how this even happened, but the throwing attacks on the Smithscript Cirque somehow flew right under the sweeping nerfs to backhand blades in 1.14. Just sidestepped right around that shit. This does come with a noticeable deficit in base damage because they have a ranged attack, and the S scaling in its keen affinity closes that gap very comfortably, allowing it to compete with the Curse Blade and the standard backhand blade a bit more directly while still only weighing 2 pounds. Throwability is the only real edge that Smithscript weapons have over their competition, and I'm guessing the throwing range is sorta meant to be a little on the assy side, because if the range was actually realistic, there would be little point to using most other weapons. Number 7, Rilana's Twin Blades. Leveling either Intelligence or Faith will increase the elemental damage for only 1 sword, and leveling both completely neglects the physical damage, which is where most of its punch actually comes from. Latest Sword can be more consistently built around despite finding it near the end of the game, and even the basic LGS can be paired with Wing Stance, which might be one of the greatest slam dunks in this generation's culture since pointed slingbacks and zero-waste meals. For this weapon, the only real option you have here is investing in strength and dex and just not using the unique skill attached to it, or investing in either intelligence or faith while only using 1/2 of the attached skill, which is way too inconvenient to build around, because even if I've lodged myself deep into the intestines of Journey 5, I'm assuming I haven't ignored Arcane. Number 6, Dryleaf Arts. Another nail-biter here, since only 2 of these fuckers actually took the competition seriously enough to show up and give a shit, and it was probably one of the hardest ones to call too, since the R1 attacks all share the same MVs despite Dane's footwork having alternate attack animations. However, since a great deal of those attacks are considered kick attacks, evidenced by the params labeling them such, that means they're also boosted by the Shattered Stone Talisman and the Divine Birdgreaves, making the attack string on Dane's footwork perform around 15% better in every situation. I actually can't believe there's no objective or numerical difference between the 2 of these. We really needed a talisman and some shoes to come in and blow the fucking whistle just to figure this out. They cooked up an entire moveset and added in a function that allowed the game to differentiate between punches and kicks just for this one weapon to work properly, and then turned around and made Radahn's kneecap into a shield. Number 5, the Greatbow. The lowest base damage and the lowest scalings on any heavy thrusting sword means this decision is unfortunately very easy. And the reason that's so unfortunate is because a clip making rounds on the internet of me talking shit about this weapon, I'm pretty sure would generate more controversy than a clip of me saying a slur, and that is not a joke, I genuinely believe that. I'm actually afraid to talk shit about this weapon because I know how many people either love it as much as I do, or have gotten absolutely embarrassed by it in PvP, but when the numbers say what they do, the best I can possibly give you in this situation is an apology and to just let you all down easy. This sword is eternally locked in an arm wrestle with the Godskin Stitcher, on which one has the worst infusion scalings, but considering how similar they are, we might need to look elsewhere for a deciding factor. The Godskin Stitcher is a half pound heavier, but it also inches just past the AP in range, has 3 more base damage, and even has a unique heavy attack. Number 4, the Dueling Shield. Speaking strictly on the weapon type itself, Dueling Shields are the 3-in-1 men's anti-dandruff shampoo of Elden Ring. As long as you have one, even the shitty one, there's nothing else you really need to chase after. No matter what the affinity is, the Carian Shield soars far above this one by at least maybe 50 points, and the Carian Shield also has an entire 3rd stat that it can scale with, but without any noticeable compromise to physical base damage. You find both Dueling Shields in roughly the same place too, which leaves the varying limitations on the plain Dueling Shield feeling very confusing and mostly just unnecessary, because choosing this over the Carian Thrusting Shield means sacrificing improvements to literally everything. But that doesn't change the fact that building around it properly still lets you abuse one of the most tyrannically heavy-handed guard counter strategies introduced in the DLC. Probably not that great if you're not in line waiting to join the cult of counterattacking, but even as a basic R1 machine, it's still like, it's not terrible. Number 3, the Great Katana. I got unusually frustrated when I looked this up, but the Great Katana's infusion scalings are like some of the most disrespectful numbers in the entire DLC. The Keen Affinity can't even find it within itself to give 50 points of scaling to dex. It jumps from 75 to 123, which is bad. That's fucking bad is what that is. More humiliatingly, that's still a higher dex ceiling than the Rakshasa Great Katana, which only measures in at 110 at max level. Granted, the gap in power mostly comes from the Rakshasa's passive hyper armor effect, but even without that, the Rakshasa still seems to be the best option, mathematically speaking. The Dragon Hunter Katana has a flexible weapon skill that can laser down anything in addition to dragons, and has single-handedly flipped the whole damn table regarding the community's opinion towards fighting them. And I'm supposed to like this one more because you can put repeating thrust on it. People got mad at me for ranking the Great Katana where I did in the DLC weapons video too. Well, I guess it's time to fucking explain yourselves because I ain't seeing it. Number 2, the Troll's Golden Sword. Making colossal swords sound bad in any capacity is like gym membership cancellation levels of difficult. And I knew that if I went that route, it would be a fast pass to me just sounding like a fucking fool for 50 seconds. So instead, I've decided to measure this one up against the other infusible colossal swords in the game and just let the numbers themselves explain to you why this one falls somewhere within the bottom 5 options every single time. The Zweihander directly competes with it in most cases, despite being 8 pounds lighter. A Watchdog's heavy greatsword gets the only other S scaling in strength aside from the Ruin's greatsword, and the greatsword is just, well, it's the Greatsword. I also considered putting the shittier Greatsword of Radahn up here, but I ultimately settled with the giant golden toothpick, mostly because I've complained about in-game rewards being too underwhelming, and I've also complained a lot about in-game rewards being pointlessly powerful since you just beat the game. And I don't know, maybe in-game rewards just like shouldn't be a thing. Maybe as soon as you kill Radahn, it should just boot you right to a menu that's like, congratulations, fuckface. You want to start a new game or pick up from before you beat the last game? Number 1, the Hook Claws. So, claws fuck. It's no secret that claws fuck. It's not even an open secret. It's just a rudimentary law of the world we've all consented to being a part of. Barbaric Roar is stupid. Bleed infusions are stupid. You could tether these weapons together with a piece of old twine and start flinging them around like nunchucks, and you'd still get work done if you don't accidentally slice your balls off. Even still, the Hook Claws have a lot of trouble catching up to the rest of the group. Raptor Talons get a much higher dex scaling on the Keen Affinity with the difference of almost 20 points, and they even get a spicy little unique R2 attack that advances the player forward. The Bloodhound Claws and Venomous Fang have worse scalings, but the base damage is torqued enough for it to just not matter. In addition to the Bloodhound Claws coming out of the box with a verifiably broken 7-ton atom bomb of a weapon ash, and the Claws of Night are just so far ahead of everything else in the race that even calling it a race exudes the same dishonesty as putting ghost hunting documentaries in the non-fiction section. The moveset is fluid, the status gets applied like 5 times as quickly as most other weapons, and I almost put the Great Katana at number 1 here, but there's not a single Great Katana in the DLC that even gets an A scaling on anything, that's just fucking preposterous to me. So I guess we can give a round of applause to the Hook Claws for being the best of the worst. I spent 30 minutes trying to Photoshop a trophy shaped like dog shit before realizing tons of other people had that idea because I found hundreds of them on Google Images. Someone on Etsy is fucking selling these for like a lot of money. War Thunder is free to play on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. Both newcomers and players who have been inactive for over 6 months across PC and consoles can grab multiple premium vehicles, limited in-game currency, and more. Want to register? Find my links in the pinned comment and video description.
You're not slacking, are you?
Shot.